Good morning and welcome to Many Paths, Many Visions, brought to you by the Labyrinth Society and with your host, Christiana Brinton. Today, my guest is the well-known Pacific Northwest sand labyrinth artist, Denny Dyke, who is a featured speaker at this year's TLS Gathering, taking place 9 days from today. Greetings, Denny. Welcome to Many Paths, Many Visions. Thank you for joining me today.
Yes, good morning, Christiana. It's a pleasure to be here speaking with you.
Well, there's lots of questions, and we've got people on listening. We have your teammates on listening, which is wonderful. That's Christine Moehring. I don't know if I'm saying that right, and
It's
Pamela
Mary.
Moehring and Pam Hansen. And oh, I see her. She's on again. So great. And we have a few other people who are listening in. We have Ruda from Lithuania in Europe. And then we have a Daniel who I have a feeling might be my friend from Vermont, but maybe not. It only says Daniel. So greetings to everybody. And thank you so much for joining the Many Paths, Many Visions episode today. I'm going to start right in. Let's talk about this year's gathering theme. It's honoring the labyrinth environment, co-creating with nature. And you, like the other featured presenter that I had on last week, you also have been living, breathing, and working within this theme for quite a long time. But I'd like to have some background. So what led you to decide to do public sandscapes full time in 2015? I mean, what led up to that point?
Well, Christiana, I've been involved with labyrinths since 2002, but I didn't start drawing in the sand regularly until about 2011. And I used the name Circles in the Sand, which was just part of Sacred Journeys, which is my labyrinth ministry. Then it was more than my experiencing labyrinths on the beach than doing it for somebody else. I played with the tides. I got used to the sand. And several things like that. So for several years, I practiced drawing different types of labyrinths. During the summer of 2014, I was no longer the old guy walking in circles, dragging a staff, or the alien leaving his mark. People were actually coming to walk the labyrinth. It was then working with walk-through labyrinths because of the sand. It was easier for people to walk. That fall, I decided to continue drawing full-time starting in January 2015, and I'm still creating a sandy path for all to experience.
Okay. So a couple of things you said piqued my interest. And I think the next question that I have for you sort of ties into that. What makes the Oregon coast a perfect medium for your sand creations? You talked about you learned about the sand and you dealt with the tides. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, unless you go down to the beach frequently, you don't realize how much the sand moves around. I started drawing at Coquille Point in Bandon for a while, but the sand really goes off kilter for several months. Then I started going down to Face Rock, and because of the situation of the point there, I can either draw on the north side or the south side, and I can usually find some good sand to draw on. The other thing about Bandon is the cliffs, the rock spires, all the bulk kelp. Fortunately, that's only seasonal. And I'm able to incorporate that in my design. So I draw below tide lines, so it's important for the sand to drain well also.
Okay. All right. So it's so interesting when you talk to artists like yourself. You say things that for you is just natural. It's just like this is what it is, and this, of course, this is what you're. But for people who have never experienced before, some of this information is like, what is he talking about? What does he mean? So first of all, I want to just give a background. So you're on the Oregon coast in Bandon, Oregon, and this area or the Oregon coast has wide beaches, and at low tide, if the tide goes out very far, so you have a lot of flat, hard packed or relatively hard packed areas that you can create these multi spiral sandscapes that have spirals and labyrinths all joined together with paths. This is what you do. And Unlike many places, like for instance, I'm on the East Coast a lot in the summertime, and there isn't a lot of beach, and what there is very small hard packed sand, and then a lot of thick, gunky, thick moving sand that you can't draw in like that. It won't. It doesn't stay. The design doesn't stay. Um, so I just wanted to really, for those of us our listeners, really explain that what you talk when you talk about the sand and the seaweed that comes in, the giant kelp, um, these are all part of what is distinctive for that area of the country on the coast. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. The southern coast of Bandon, it doesn't have the wide beaches like northern Oregon. Where we drew up in Tierra del Mar was actually better sand than I draw in locally, just because of the large expanses. The advantage to Bandon is I got the viewpoint overlooking so everybody can see it from ahead. We've got all the rocks. I got stuff to draw around. But as far as good sand, uh, Seaside, Lincoln City, all of that is just fantastic sand to work in. It's just that you can't get a good overhead view.
I see. Okay. And so it's dramatic when you're standing up on a cliff overlooking and can take wide expanse pictures, of the whole form that you've created.
Yeah, and we're starting to do some work with some drones and that sort of thing too in other areas. So looking forward to doing a lot of that next year.
Okay. So I call what you do dreamscapes because they remind me of the Aboriginal walkabout Dreamtime art from Australia. So what led you to the form? I just mentioned it briefly, but what led you to this form you now use, and what provides the guidelines for each draw?
Actually, I know this sounds difficult. There is no guideline. Um, as we've evolved, we now set intentions for the draw. The intentions for the rest of this year is just love, and we incorporate that in everything we do. Um, I was practicing in 2014. I started practicing with the double spirals and then connecting several of them together. I was alone on the beach, so when I was done, I took a small rake and started to Zen garden around all the spirals. I walked the multiple spirals with one path and then left the beach. When I got to the top of the viewpoint, and I can still remember this quite clearly, and I saw it for the first time, I was stunned by the way it looked. I had no idea the texturing would transform the path the way it did. At that time, it became my dream field, and it continues to evolve. And that was the day I became an artist.
Hmm, interesting. Um, but okay, I didn't. Well, guidelines might have been the wrong word. So, but you do incorporate, like if there are little rocks or boulders, or if you have the
Uh,
seaweed, you do incorporate them into each draw. You mean you work with what's there?
oh, absolutely. When I first arrive on site, I go to the top of the viewpoint. I've got about 3 or 4 areas that I can draw in at different times. I take a look at where the sand's at, where the rocks are at. Occasionally, I do take photography into condition so I make sure I get it pointed the right direction. But it's mainly about the walk. And anytime I can get around all the rocks, and that's only a couple times a year, it's really special to be able to be walking the path and you go between two series of rocks where you can't see anything else and you come out to the ocean. It's just a fantastic thing to do working within the environment.
Hmm. And talk a little bit about the utensils. You mentioned a rake. Is it a special kind of rake? What do you use to you create your sand drawings? And
Yeah, I used to use a staff, and I've got a couple of those that I still use. My primary drawing tool now is a rake that I kind of customized a little bit. It's about 6 inches wide, and I draw the patterns out, and I do it bit by bit. It just kind of comes as I get on the sand. So I draw around something, and then I connect a couple of them together and just see what feels right, what the intention is, and all that. And when I'm done, it looks like a giant paint by number. And then my guest groomers come in and make me look good.
So, it's a you. So you mentioned here and there, and I'll talk about this a bit, but talk a little bit more about the preparation. What goes into deciding when to draw, when to do a draw, and where? Uh, how
That
much far out do you have to plan this?
Yeah, well, let's put it this way. I'm working on 2018 schedule right now.
Uh-huh.
I've got already, I think it's 35 days drawn out for the next summer season. The hard part was deciding, like you said, where do you decide to draw? Um, Bandon's become my home beach. I love it there. It's a fantastic community. The viewpoint is a state park, so we have restroom facilities and plenty of parking up on top. It's just an ideal place for me to allow more of the public to see what I do. So that is my home beach.
And do you charge? How do you actually? How do you? Okay, I'll wait for that question. So,
Okay.
but I'm just curious about that. But that can come later. But I wanted to talk about because you are doing a draw, or will attempt to do a draw at the gathering on the following Monday. So the title of your gathering presentation is "My Journey on the Sandy Path." Um, when you started down this path, did you, I mean, in your website, it says you had 20,000 people walking your sandscapes last year. Did you ever envision that?
No, I can remember I started full time January 1st of 2015. And I remember going home and telling my wife, hey, I had 15 people there today. And, off and on, some days, even after I went full time, 15, 20 people going by. Um, and now we're up to, we probably average close to 200 people at most events now.
Wow. And so, how many times during the summer, this past summer, did you do an event in Bandon? Did you have a draw?
I had 36 scheduled draws for this summer.
Wow.
And I think only one of them got called on account of weather. Thank you, Bandon. you know, but it's with the long days and long summer tides, I get a lot of opportunities to draw. And what I did this year when I scheduled was I was doing 4 and 5 day draws instead of 2 or 3. A lot of those are very early in the morning, and I've been out. I've actually started before daybreak on some of them.
So, okay. Wait, okay. So, wait, you said, repeat what you just said. You said you did 4 or 5 days instead of 2 or 3?
Well, yeah, the year before I was scheduling weekends, and if the tides were okay, I'd add a Monday or a Friday. This year, I went strictly by the low tides, and as soon as it was able for me to draw, if it started on a Wednesday, if I had a good low tide early in the morning, the tide shifts about 45 minutes an hour every day, so it progressively gets later. So I catch the earliest tide, and I can actually draw for 4 days, 5 days in a row, and then of course the tide takes away the previous day.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Just more questions. I just gotta put the questions in my brain to remember to ask you afterwards. So
Understand?
I had the pleasure of volunteering for the draw you did in association with the Labyrinth Northwest in 2015, I think it was that summer or the
Yep.
fall. And I can attest to the rigor it takes to make one of your sandscapes. I had blisters on my hands for days from that raking, and all I did was help rake the Zen garden part. Um, Talk about the feedback from beach walkers who come upon you and your team raking the sand.
Uh, Actually, when I first started, I felt a lot like Tom Sawyer. Hey, come on and whitewash the fence. You want to rake some sand. Um, but once people get involved with it, they get attached to it, and they really enjoy it. It was an honor to have as many people now offering to help as they do. I only allow about 10 people to assist in a draw. Otherwise, everybody finishes too quickly, and it develops all that energy while the drawing's going on. So it's really worked out well.
And what do people say? So let's talk about some of the comments you've received when after people have just raked with you or that experience and then walked. What are some of the comments and the feedback?
Oh, they go the full gambit from, gee, that was a lot of fun, to I really left something here and it needs to stay here for the ocean, to I recalled the time with my mom, or whatever. So they, it puts you in a meditation, and that's what my work's all about. Okay. I'm done trying to fool people. I'm tricking them into meditating. Uh, so anyhow, the comments are from the walkers. I've had some really fantastic people with experiences out there. I had two, and I try to talk to everybody that walks at least before they start. And I had this two sisters come in, and they were a little down and stuff, and they said that their mom was in hospice and they were down there visiting her. And when they came out, they came over, and here go the tears. And they thanked me because they were notified that their mom had passed.
Whoa.
But I was glad to offer a vehicle for them to experience that. I've done weddings, I've done reunions, I've done birthday parties. There's just so many things you can do and so many experiences to be had. And like any labyrinth, every walk is different. And especially with mine, because it's only there once.
Well, this points to the next thing that I wanted, this whole aspect of liminality that I experienced when walking your sandscape. They're huge. And so walking takes time, and the waves start washing the form away. It started washing the form away as I was walking, but there is this sense of solidity or permanence being an illusion. It's very strong. And you have it's a meditative space, but it's very naturally uh, uh, the energy is extraordinary because you have the wave sound and even when it's not really sunny, and often it isn't, but the sun is peeping through, but you have the birds calling, the seabirds calling, the waves pounding, and the waves lapping, and it's a very strong natural energy that you experience, as well as this liminality, this impermanence, this uh, it's extraordinary. So talk about that about this, and this points to this ability for this natural setting to allow people to shift to a place where they can be in contact with their mother who's just passed. Not something that ordinarily happens. So talk about that
Christiana, you just explained every reason why I do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. First of all, when most people go down to the beach, they've left about 25% of their baggage at home. They're not worried about their job. They're not worried about, something else. So we're, partially there before they even get down there. And then after that,
Please mute yourself. Whoever that is, please mute yourself. Please mute yourself. Thank you, Anel. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
okay, where was I?
Why you do what you do.
Oh, yeah. So once I start to draw, the drawing takes me about an hour. And like I said, usually when I start, I'm down there alone. By the time I'm done, there's anywhere from, I don't know, 15, 20, 30 people standing around watching. And they start discussing what's going on. And during that time, the entire process, there's no negativity. Everything is positive. I fold that into every move I make. And it's very intentional. When I wrap around a rock, it's so they can see the rock better. If I go out into a certain sections, there's always a reason behind it when I'm working. I don't know what it is at the time, but it works out when I'm done. And there's something about being on the sand. I've had people walk and then come out, take their shoes off and walk it again. The kids, they love the spirals. They'll go running off. Families will show up, and the first thing the parents want to do is hold the kids back. And, I say, hey, just let them go. They'll be fine, you know. And after about 5 minutes, it takes about 15 minutes to walk one of my pieces. After about 5 minutes, everybody settled into the fact that, hey, there's nothing to worry about. I'm at the beach. I got the sounds, the birds, the sun, like you were saying, the wind, and it's all good. And the kids are in a container. I don't have to worry about them. So they enjoy their walk. So it's really amazing to be able to allow people to experience that.
Well, let's talk about your team. I skipped that question because I sort of wanted to continue the flow. So, but I want to talk about your team. You have Christine Moehring, I didn't say that right, who's a detail artist, and Pam Hansen, who does all the photography for you. Talk about how that relationship, how did you meet them? How did that relationship develop?
Okay, well, I started full time in January 2015 and quickly found out that the hardest thing for me to do was to draw on the sand and get photos of my own work. I tried to grab them with my phone or whatever. Um, about 3 weeks into January, Pam was down there just taking some pictures and she shared them with me. And I really, really liked the way she captured what I had done and the coast abandoned and everything. And she was a retired photographer, and she kind of came out of retirement and has been focusing on my work for quite a while and the coast abandoned. And so we hit it off real well. In April, we actually started Circles in the Sand as an LLC. At that time, it was primarily just to get insurance and that sort of thing in case we needed it. And then about 3-4 weeks later, I met Christine Moehring, who is actually a neighbor and a close friend of Pam's. And she was helping me groom labyrinths for several draws. And she made a point of coming down. She really got the feeling of the labyrinths and what we were doing and enjoyed the grooming. And then I don't know when it actually occurred, but at some point I asked her if she'd like to do a couple designs inside the labyrinth. So I draw an empty circle and she'd put something in there. And today Christine is our design detail artist for Circles in the Sand and has definitely taken a life of her own also. And we appreciate everything she does for us. So between Pam and Christine, they try to keep me in balance and allow me to do what I do.
So explain what it means to be a detail artist. What part of the designs is it necessary to have someone with her skills?
The primary focus of that is I draw an entrance to all of them, of course. And what I've done lately, it's new since you walked with us, is I draw what I call a dedication circle. It's about an 8-foot circle, and we put circles in the sand in there and the intention for the day. And she does part of that for us, the script work and all that. Then I draw a couple other large circles around those for people to sign, so that when the tide comes in and takes the labyrinth, they take the dedication circle at the same time. Then the spirals you see on the outside of my pieces is Christine's work. And then I do draw circles and blank spots within, and she'll go back in depending on if we have a theme for the day, and we do use themes occasionally. She does a mermaid that has gotten a lot of attention, Mary the Mermaid. So we do a base thing where she'll put a starfish in and a crab in certain places within it. And it just gives the people something more to just kind of look at as they go through. So it's been a great accent.
That's so interesting that Christine does this. And when I was talking with Jeffrey Bale last week. He was talking about the pictures that he creates with his stones. And I was mentioning the artistry of the Greek yayas, the old ladies who come in roads and into the homes and put in iconic symbols that, like an octopus or a dolphin, that bring that area good luck. That actually is, and every home in Lindos has to have this, has to have one of these circles with this icon in it. And it's really about what the dolphin, what the, like, it's sort of like an animal fetish in terms, like a First Nation, like indigenous, the characteristics of a dolphin, the characteristics of an octopus, and it's for that place to have good luck to, and so this reminds me of that, what she's painting there, what she's drawing there is
Yeah,
similar to that.
yeah, it's very similar. I found that well, actually, the rings and that kind of stuff kind of started off because if you groom the whole thing, the groomers get a little tired. You know, nowadays that's not a problem. I've got a full staff of volunteers, but we put them in as a breaks, and I kind of watch in the design. I may put three in one section, and if we're doing a celestial, she'll go in and put the sun, the moon, and those sort of things in there to go along with the theme. So yeah, it's just another point of intention in the art piece. I'm really fortunate in that I create the piece. I draw it out, and Christine, or she goes in and does the accent work. And then we have all these volunteers that come in and share their energy. So it's really a group effort to get it completed. There's no way I could do one of those on my own.
Mm-hmm. And what about because I remember at the one that I went to, you did have a full size shark medieval labyrinth design. Do you have to bring other tools to make sure, at this point, do you have to bring something else to make sure you get the sacred geometry correct, or do you just know how to do it now and you just do it?
Uh, no, when I do the chart or a labyrinth like that, I do use guidelines. I put strings out to make sure everything's square. I stay as close to the geometry as I can. Quite frankly, with the free form of my dream field and everything else now, and the way I can incorporate it, I don't draw as many of those as I'd really like to. I've got several people, that say, "When are you going to do another one?" I says, "Well, I'll try it this summer." The sand really wasn't conducive to it this year, but when I do those labyrinths, I do stay as close to the detail as I can. And Christine has mastered the lunations.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She was great at it. Yeah, she was really. I mean, I was stunned. It was stunning because it's sand, and you don't really think about it, but they move. They're little individual, and each one is like a snowflake. They're all
Yep.
different, and the west coast of Oregon, the sand comes from all of the probably Puget Sound and down from Alaska and over from Japan. I mean, it's from everywhere, right? I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
Hawaii, the Hawaiian
Oh,
Islands.
yeah.
Um,
Absolutely. It's from all over the place, and that's the universal of everything. We're all one. We're all connected. Even the sands are connected to each other.
yeah. So I think that these sandscapes get imbued with that as well, because you have this energy coming from all around the world uh, uh, as a part of this, what you're building as a foundational part of these art drawings that you do. So that's really interesting because it's inherent in the sand itself. This
Yeah,
energy.
there are definitely power spots on the Earth. There's a lot of them that are natural face rock area with all the big rocks and the sacred space from the Indians when they were down in that area. And then it becomes about intention and expectation. If the intention of spirituality is put into a place, everybody that goes there expects it, and we get what we expect.
Mm. So now, okay, I'm going to switch a little bit. I want to go back to, you said you created an LLC, and we talked a little bit about people just coming up and walking the beach and finding you. But how do you actually, for your business now, how do you get the word out? What do you do to encourage people to come? And do you have a donation basket, or how do you help your your LLC now flourish and survive? And I don't know if it's even about making money, but can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's always been an issue with the type of work I do. Um, and no, it did not start off about money. It'd be nice to, cover expenses, and we're doing that now. As a matter of fact, we're in the process of nonprofit status and getting some grants, hopefully, and that sort of thing to keep us going. But that being said, all the beaches in Oregon belong to the public, and there is no soliciting or accepting donations on the beach. The viewpoint that I work off of is the state park and has the same guidelines. So I can't put out a basket or anything like that. I can't sell anything around the area. I do have a couple stores, Bandon Inn and Olivia's Garden in Bandon, are both going to be start stocking apparel for me. I'll have long sleeve shirts and sweatshirts available here in the next couple of weeks. We do have a new calendar out to help support our effort. We do have a website and a Shopify, which we're trying to expand. But the big thing I want to do right now is make sure that Circles in the Sand can continue on as an identity for Bandon and for the sake of community, the labyrinth, and the well-being of people in general. So that's the primary goal. And we appreciate all the people that have supported us. We can accept tax-deductible donations on the website.
And how do you advertise? How do you, because you mentioned you had a team, you have a group of people who show up. How do you advertise on the website, or do you advertise in local papers, or?
A couple of the local papers routinely just add my events to them. Everybody knows about them in town, and there's quite a bit of support in town. We do put out a schedule, usually about 3 months in advance. Although I'm working on next summer schedule right now, and we distribute that in all the hotels and motels in town. We've been asked to send them to a couple of the travel magazines and that sort of thing. So this is what we have to. This is the next step we have to take as Circles in the Sand, is to make sure that we can become as well known as we can, so that we can benefit as many people as we can, for people to come down and enjoy a walk on the labyrinth. Maybe next time they see one at a hospital or in a park, they won't be afraid to walk if they'll know what it is. And that's one of the aspirations of mine, is I teach the experience of a labyrinth. There's a lot to learn about a labyrinth, and they're exciting things. But until you experience it, you really don't know what to expect. And a walk on the beach is an excellent way to do that.
Hmm. Well, it's something that most people enjoy doing. There are some people who don't like beaches and sand, but that's the way it goes. But
Yeah.
but the Oregon coast is so spectacular to begin with. And I have only visited one section of it, pretty much the upper section. So I haven't been down to Bandon yet. I need to get there. I know that I need to check it out. But I wanted to talk a little bit. I wanted first, tell me, how has this work? I mean, you mentioned it a little bit, but how has it internally affected you? How has it how has it
Oh,
affected you personally, Denny?
oh boy, that's a good one. Uh, I studied metaphysics for 6 years. I taught and did a lot of other stuff in my past lives. And the question always came up, living in the now, living in the present, what does that mean? I finally get it. Back then, I gave a lecture on live your passion, don't get stuck in something you don't want to do. We all have the right to be happy, etc. And at the time, I had no idea what my passion was, and now I do. I look forward to every draw. I look forward to every person, every comment. I'm pleased to be able to give everyone that comes down and walks with me a polished gemstone, agate, or shard crystals or something like that, to remember their day with me. And all that energy is there. And, it's just an honor to be able to present that to people.
Well, it's interesting you say no. So let me ask you, if you don't mind telling, when did this occur when you found your passion? How old were you? How old were you when you found your passion?
Oh, let's see. I just turned 70. So, and about 3 years ago is when I went full time. So I was in, late 60s.
Yeah.
And, it keeps me active. I walk every day, 3 to 4 miles. I try to get in. When I'm on the sand, I do a lot more than that. It gives me something to focus on. Most people come down, and a typical walk, like I said, it's about 20 minutes. So the whole experience for most people is 45 minutes to an hour, and they get a lot out of it. Yeah. Keep in mind, I'm down there for 6 hours in that environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I am, after a 5-day draw, I tell people it takes me a couple days to get my feet back on the ground. I've got so much good energy.
I can imagine.
It is. It's just phenomenal to live in that space and time, and to be totally present, be totally aware, and care about what's just going on around me at that moment. And I thank everybody that's allowed me to do that.
Yeah, I just love this. Thank you for sharing and being honest with how old you were and how old you're, because it just points to people don't give up. You had a full life before that. You did what you had to do. You provided for your family or in your relationship, your wife, whatever, and you did X, Y, Z. I mean, it wasn't like you weren't involved in stuff, but you came to that point, and it took this long, but you did find your passion. So this is a really good lesson for people out there. Don't give up just because you haven't found your passion at 30 years old doesn't mean you're not going to.
Well,
just keep being open to things.
Yeah, in 2011, when I first started, I probably drew close to 500 labyrinths that year. But I was drawing 4 or 5 a day, when I would draw, and it was just random, go down and, figure out low tides and that kind of stuff at the time. But I learned a lot about what it's like to be alone on the beach. There are a lot of days that I was the only one down there, or a couple of walkers, or maybe a horseback rider. And I just learned a lot what it's like to be with me. And I learned a lot about drawing labyrinths. That's a whole nother story. But the sensation of being down on the beach first thing in the morning is just absolutely phenomenal. And as that experience grew, and then when I went full time in 2015, and now all of a sudden I had a schedule that I had to adhere to because I'd already put it out there. I've never once gone down to the beach not wanting to go. I've never gotten up at 4 o'clock in the morning and say, damn, I got to get up. It's just a marvelous way for me to be at this point in my life.
So I want to hear from Christine and Pam, and I hope that they can be heard. I'd like to know how this work has changed their lives or how it matters to them. Christine and Pam, can you unmute yourselves and join us right now?
Yes, I'm here. This is Christine.
Hi, Christine.
Hi. I live on the beach, so every morning I wake up and I see this beautiful Pacific Ocean and the stacks of rocks and the beach, and so I love the beach. And I heard that there was this guy drawing labyrinths down there, and of course I was curious and came down to see what was going on, and I got to help. So it was a great experience, and so I kept coming down, And I feel like Denny does as well. I've been doing this for about almost 3 years now. I look forward to it. I enjoy it immensely. It fills me up completely. I never have a second thought about going, oh, do I have to go down there? I've never had that feeling. Every time I'm down there, it's a positive and wonderful experience for me personally. And I can see what it's doing to other people who come down and enjoy the labyrinth. A lot of them have a very strong emotional response. And it's just a wonderful thing. So I just get a great personal pleasure out of being part of something so wonderful for so many people.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's great. And so the three of you work well together. I mean, you work well together. You enjoy working with each other.
Well, I think Denny and I are on the same page because we come down to the beach and we talk about the sand and the rocks and the weather and the tides and what's going on and way before anybody else is there. And then he starts drawing and I start doing what I do. and we're in sync. We talk well together. We communicate well together. And we've never had any kind of issue or problem at all. It's like we're both down there for the same reason, and it's all gone very well for both of us.
That's great. That's great, Pam. I can see that your mic is on. Can you, or would you like to say something?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Pam.
Hi. How are you?
Good.
It's been a great podcast, and I think so many good things have been covered. The question was, how has this impacted my life, and is it different? Yes, I've been retired for several years before this all began, and it's really grown into its own entity. Circles in the Sand has a kind of a life of its own, and it's starting to drive us in terms of demands. So many people are enjoying this and wanting it and wanting more. I feel like I think Denny will agree with this, a kind of a jack of all trades. I not only do the photography, but I help with the business administration, having come from the corporate world prior to retirement. And I pinch hit if Chris is like on vacation. She recently was for a couple of draws. I do the design artistry. Not as proficient as Christine, but it's fun to draw in the sand. It really is. We have a huge following. Thousands of people following us on our Facebook page, and it's just at times for me overwhelming. Starting from, well, would you come down and take a few pictures when I draw, to something that's nearly full time in moving it forward. It's an amazing experience. There's a greater force energizing all of this, and I think it's because it's for the greater good.
Yeah, we have a favorite saying among the labyrinth community: if the labyrinth wants to be there and be created, just get out of its way because it'll happen. You don't have to do anything; it just happens. And so it's you are viscerally and physically connecting to the warp and weft of all that is when you. That is my personal opinion. I will say that, but that's what's happening when you do this. And with the sand, with the tactileness of, I don't know if that's the right word. That is a word, but you know what I mean. How tactile, how it slips through your fingers, how it molds. It's you just get drawn in, don't you? When you start making those lines, or it's very. You really do go inward very quickly in that kind of environment.
Well, it's very unifying, not only for the three of us who we recognize that each one has an important role to make this happen. But the wonderful thing that I love about the labyrinth itself is the unifying of the community. People come to the labyrinth. They don't just come and walk and leave for the most part. They come and they linger longer. They stand around the dedication circle where people write their names. They get to know each other, where they're from. There's local people who have lived here for decades that have never met each other before, and they're meeting each other at the labyrinth. It's great.
That's really cool. That's great. Yeah, that's really cool. Christine, I had one question. What kind of an artist were you prior to joining Denny and Pam?
Well, I wasn't
Oh, okay.
at all. I taught 7th and 8th grade for years. I was also a stay-at-home mom, kind of in the middle of those years of teaching, and I retired from that. And I enjoy making jewelry. I enjoy painting. So I've always kind of dabbled in art, but nothing is like drawing on the sand. I can draw a design on paper, and I'll go down to the sand, and it just won't happen on the sand because it's a different medium. And so, and of course, the drawings that I do, the embellishment that I do to the dream field is on a gigantic scale. So something that I might draw on a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper now has to translate into a 6-foot diameter circle. So it's a very different thing, drawing on the sand. And so I've just, I just by accident stumbled onto it, serendipity, whatever you want to call it. And Denny liked what I did. And of course, I think I've become better over time at what I'm doing. But I remember at one point, Denny said to me, "Can you draw a mermaid?" And I thought, well, I never have, but I snuck in between some rocks, and there was some nice sand there, and I drew a mermaid, a freehand, about maybe 5 or 6 feet in length, just to see if I could do it. And he came around the corner and looked at it and said, "Wow." So I think at that point I realized I could do it. I was given that encouragement, and so I've just kept practicing at it, and somehow it's taken to me and I've taken to it.
Well, there's also the perspective, isn't it, Christine? I have that with the photography. You have it with the drawing, because everybody on the sand is looking at the labyrinth and the designs from about a 45-degree angle. And so you have to take into account the perspective from how it's seen on the sand.
Exactly, Pam.
Right. I drew an orca whale and it looked really great. And I stood back from it and it looked too thin. It wasn't thick enough. It wasn't wide enough for the perspective. And so you learn how to work with that. And Christine is far too modest. Her artistry is spectacular.
Oh, Pam, thank you. One thing I noticed, I'll be down on the sand doing some edging, doing some waves, or drawing a sea turtle or whatever I'm drawing that day. And then I will walk up the staircase to the viewpoint, which is perhaps 60 to 70 feet above the sand down below. And it takes my breath away because I haven't really seen what I was drawing until that point.
Right, and how the light captures it.
Exactly. Well, it just is a completely awe-inspiring moment for me to see it from that distance.
It's the same for the whole drawing, don't you think, Denny? You look at it, you can walk around the labyrinth, the circumference of the labyrinth, and it will look different depending on the angle of the light, whether there is a sun, or if it's in fog, which creates that marvelous natural light box where everything is even. So it's ever changing. It's never the same.
Yeah, it's a marvelous path to walk, and every turn, just like in life, presents something new to us. When the sunlight hits it from one side, it shines, the other side it looks kind of flat. So we just got to keep moving forward, and I think the dream field that we create and actually, as Christiana put, almost creates itself, because there is no predetermined plan on what we're going to do other than setting the intention. And that's what life's about right now, is intention. Let's use love as the mainstay word for the rest of the year.
Yeah, Christiana asked, about the reaction to some of the people, and what's surprising to me, because I wasn't really immersed in labyrinths before this all began, is that people will identify on Denny's paths where there's spirals or there's squares or there's like a wave walk path. They have begun to be able to relate that to themselves in a personal way, whether it's about something that's happened to them in their life or solving a problem. And I mean, how great is that for people to have a tool like this and not even realize what it is until after they've had the immersion and the experience.
And that's why we get so many wow people that come up to us afterwards with tears running down their faces, or complete joy, and it was something they had never done before. We get these wonderful responses from people that come down to walk the labyrinth, and it just makes it so worthwhile.
And the little children and their exuberance.
Yeah.
They'll run, and then sometimes they'll walk, but sometimes they'll do it many times, and they'll come up and say, I did it 5 times. And they're so proud and excited about it. It's fun.
Yeah. Well, we've got 3 other people on this call, Anel, Daniel, and Ruda. If any of you would like to unmute yourselves and ask a question of Denny or, Pam or Christine, please do so now, if anyone would like to ask a question. Hi, Anel.
Hi. I'd like to ask, and I sort of got in on about 2 or 3 minutes into it, but I'd like to ask, if you have people that come down and don't know anything about the labyrinth, do you have something that you say to them? How do you introduce it to them, or let them know what they need to do to it?
Okay, if they're just coming down to groom, of course, we'll train, and we've got all the rakes, and raking sand's not that difficult. But as far as the labyrinth goes, when I open up the labyrinth, I always open the labyrinth as a tool for meditation, transformation, and healing. It's a single path, no dead ends, no wrong turns. All you have to do is keep moving, just like in life, and keep going. And when you get done with the walk, you'll actually come back out of the labyrinth right next to where you went in.
Do you, Denny, this is me. Do you actually have printed sheets that say that and you hand it to people, or do you actually talk? Because people come at different times. So even if you warm the labyrinth or do a warming ceremony or whatever kind of ritual you do at the beginning, they might not be there for that. So do you actually go up to people before they walk and tell them this each time for each person?
As often as I can, I try to keep it personal. I do have several ambassadors that have been working with me lately that will handle my dream stones and allowing me to mingle with more people. People are getting more used to asking questions now, and I find that very encouraging. It's been quite a process to go from having people walk around me while I'm drawing for fear of what I might be doing into wanting to come up and understand what the labyrinth's about. What an honor.
Denny, you might want to talk about the dream stones. That's a very special element.
Yeah, we lightly touched on that, but I give everybody a dream stone, and that dream stone, of course, is kept at my house under some very nice conditions. And then when we take them down to the beach, they're exposed to that atmosphere. And then when we give them to somebody before they walk, all the energy of the walk, all the thoughts, everything else is embedded in that mineral. And they can take it home with them. And anytime they want to remember the day, all they have to do is pick up that stone, take a deep breath, and they'll remember Bandon, they'll remember the walk, they'll remember whatever it is they experienced.
And do you buy these stones, or do you find them, or a combination of both? Or
It's we're purchasing all of them right now. I've been using the same woman ever since I started, and she does mineral and gem shows. So we use a pretty quality stone. It's something that is really personal to me, since that's what I started. But we've talked about, maybe giving them another type of token, but this is just so special. So that's what we continue to do, and it is an added expense that we have. But sell a few calendars, sell a few shirts, get a few donations, and we'll be fine.
and the calendars, are they, so the pictures are all the photographs that Pam's taken
Yeah,
for different
yeah,
months?
yeah. This is our third year, and Pam knocked it out of the park again. So yeah, there's 12 photos, and all of my work in Bandon.
And you're going to have some of these available at the gathering, at the Labyrinth Society gathering next week?
Oh, you can count. You can count on that one.
Okay,
Christiana.
Okay, good. That's good to know. So Daniel and Ruda, do either one of you want to ask a question? Because we still have a few minutes. So you're welcome to join us and ask a question if you'd like.
That's Daniel again. His mic's not working.
Daniel, your mic, Daniel, your mic isn't working. Your mic isn't working. Yeah. So for some reason, it's doing is making noise. It's going. It's not making your actual voice sounds. Sorry, but you can open up the chat box at the bottom of the control panel and type in something if you'd like to. I'm opening up mine. So I see it says Daniel from Vermont. I think it's, hi, Dan. So you can ask a question, just write in the chat box, and then I can transmit that to the team here. So you can just go ahead and write anything you want, and then you type your message. But hi, Dan. Dan I know who this is. This is a dear old friend of mine who lives in Vermont, who has been wanting to put a labyrinth in on his property for a long time. He lives in a beautiful location on a pond, and he's a dear friend from many, many years ago when I used to work and live in the New York area. So hi, Dan. It's great to know that you're on, and he's really very much interested because he wants to know all the different types of labyrinths and how people do them, and so I know why he's on, and I hope he's gotten some information about this today. Although there's no sand where he is, it's rocks and grass and lots of pine trees, big pine trees. So I wanted to know, you all, the three of you, what are future projects besides the gathering coming up, and your featured keynote address there. What else do you have planned? Have any of the towns on the coast asked you to come and create a sandscape for one of their functions or festivals or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the TLS gathering up in Bainbridge. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then I won't be drawing much for the next several months. It's only a couple of days a month that I can be scheduled. So that'll leave me time to figure out some other things that we want to do. We have had inquiries about doing some healing labyrinth work in Tasmania and some dream fields in Australia. And I put that off until 2019. But in 2018, we're going to focus on Bandon, Oregon. may make a few trips. I want to go up to the Rockaway Seaside area and see just how big a labyrinth I can do next year, and a few little things like that. But it's about getting the word out, about spreading. We've really become about community, and that's what we want to represent. And what a beautiful place to work in. Pam, you have anything to
add? No, we get inquiries. We've gotten what, Denny, 3 or 4 this past year to draw elsewhere, but it's expensive. And if someone wants us to go to another area, we really need to be funded in order to do it.
Yes.
Yeah, and the problem with that is right now I'm setting out the best low tide schedules for my public work next year. That doesn't mean there's not a lot of room for private work, because I don't need the expansive tides. But we do weddings and that sort of thing. And if anybody's interested, they can just contact us, and we'll do everything we can to make their occasion as memorable as possible.
And
Well,
they love this location here in Banff. And so, just a second, Christine. And so people are actually coming to us. We did a wedding for a couple and they lived on the East Coast, and they came to Bandon to have a wedding on the labyrinth.
Mm-hmm.
And we have done several memorials for families who've lost a loved one, and it's just a wonderful, appropriate, beautiful family event to have a private draw on the beach, a labyrinth that you can all participate in, and do your healing and meditating and being together. It's just been a wonderful experience for those that have done that, and I hope we do some more of those.
Well, thank you all so much for being on today. It doesn't look like Dan did email me or message me and said that he was fine. He just enjoyed listening to everything and didn't need to ask any questions. And it doesn't look like Ruta wants to either. So I think we have reached the time when we can say goodbye, and so looking forward to seeing all of you in just another week. I'm leaving Friday for Portland early to play a little bit in Portland before Jody Lorimer and I drive up to the board meetings. But so looking forward to seeing you all there, and you introducing yourselves and what you do to the audience and the participants there, and it should be interesting trying to do one of your sandscapes on the beach there on Bainbridge Island. That'll be an interesting experience.
Okay, and that being said, you're in charge of the weather.
Yeah.
No pressure though.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the board, I will let the board know, and we will do many sun dances to line it up. So I don't mind fog so much, because as what Pam was saying, that is a very interesting experience, walking in fog.
It adds another dimension.
It certainly must certainly do that. But we'll do our best to make the rain stop for enough time for you to build and for people to walk. How's that? We'll do our best.
That'll work out just fine, dear. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Well, we're out of time, and it's really been such a pleasure sharing this hour with you, Denny and Pam and Christine. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay, Christiana, look forward to seeing you up at TLS Gathering.
Terrific. And many continued blessings on your paths, all of you. Thank you. And thank you, guests, for joining me as well. It was wonderful having you on, and I encourage people to join us on the GoToMeeting. It's easy to get on this. Just use the number that's listed, that I have listed both on the Labyrinth Society Facebook page as well as the global group. And you've been listening to the Labyrinth Society's Many Paths, Many Visions broadcast by Spreaker. with your host, Christiana Brinton. Be sure to check the Labyrinth Society website, our Facebook page, and the global group for a list of upcoming dates and guests. I will start up again after the gathering. There will be nothing during the gathering week next week. And probably the week after. So for the next 2 weeks, there won't be anything. But I am planning on having one of the workshop presenters at the gathering, hopefully more, who weren't able to be on prior to the gathering, will be on post-gathering. And I know for a fact that one of them is the director of Saramon House in Portland, Oregon, and he is someone who they have built a labyrinth at Saramon House. It is a community organization for the benefit of the community. And then I'm also going to have Tom Vetter on, who creates the maps of the state maps of where all the labyrinths are in the state and where all the labyrinth facilitators, Veritas certified facilitators, are located. So I'm going to have him on as well after the gathering. So be sure to check and these places. Also, Spreaker on the link to the Many Paths, Many Visions site on Spreaker. It also lists the upcoming dates. And so if this podcast has piqued your interest in the Labyrinth Society and you'd like more information about membership, please go to www.labyrinthsociety.org/membership. Thank you for listening to this podcast episode, and may you find what you need on your path through life. Namaste.